This is the Sounds of STL. So let St. Louis hear you.
All right, folks, welcome back to the Sounds of STL. My name is Tony Patrico, and if you are a fan of All Elite Wrestling, you've heard this man's work. He is the man behind the sounds of all we know and love from AEW. He's a music producer. He's a composer, been a lifelong wrestling fan, and that helped pave the way to do what he does for a living now, which I am incredibly jealous, from retail to combat sports and now to pro wrestling. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Sounds of STL, Mr. Mikey Rukus. What's up, man? How are you?
I'm doing very well, slightly under the weather, but I feel much better after that amazing intro. So very much appreciate it.
Well deserved, man. Well deserved. So I was telling some folks in my full-time job, I was telling them, like, listen, this is a huge deal for me because not only am I a huge fan of professional wrestling, but I'm also the music guy. So like we are now combining my two loves, and I get to sit down and I talk to you like I would love to say that I am a producer, that I am a songwriter. I am a very amateur, know what I'm doing with my computer guy who can put some things together. So like this is an honor for me to sit down and talk to you. But honestly, man, why music and why wrestling? How did that love kind of connect and kind of propel you into the career that you have today?
Yeah, man. So I want to say that it really started out of the need for supplemental income. I had done music all through high school, and I was in the midst of divorce and remarrying around 2010, and things were tight. I was starting over, and I needed to find a way to bring in supplemental income. And getting a second job just wasn't really, clocking in, clocking out. I was a manager for Best Buy. So I was working 60, 70 hours a week in the big box retail setting. I had 100 employees that reported to me. And again, starting over, I needed to find supplemental income that I could do in my spare time as opposed to being held to like going to another, building and clocking in and working specific hours. So I decided I wanted to do music. And at the time, pro wrestling was kind of, it was sewn up. It was the Jim Johnston / CFO's era, and there wasn't really a number two around in 2010. So I was really heavy into mixed martial arts. And I just decided to start from the very bottom and make music for regional fighters, amateur fighters, and then just try to network around that, whether it was websites that were doing their own podcasts and the burgeoning of the podcast realm to commercials for different apparel outlets and things like that. And it just kind of my obsession with winning and small victories and successes, even more so than just the income aspect. I wanted to win, and I wanted to advance. And within the first year and a half, I had my music featured in the UFC.
Love that.
And ended up doing work with World Series of Fighting, NBC Sports, and just continue the building on top of everything that I had done. And in 2015-ish, 2016-ish, the mixed martial arts industry kind of started to scale back and kind of recoil onto itself. Mm-hmm. And I noticed that the professional wrestling, the indie scene had basically exploded, and everyone was using social media as their avenues to promote themselves. And I just decided to start over again. And I went from the MMA industry to pro wrestling industry between 2016, late 2018. I had done around 300 entrance themes for independent wrestlers all over the world, US, UK. I was doing small package deals with indie companies. RevPro was a big one. And there was a few others. And then, AEW came calling in 2019. I saw it announced, and I just felt that the gig was mine, and I felt like I had done enough work up to that point, because you're looking at close to a decade at that point of just trying to find your rhythm and trying to understand how to tell stories. And even then, when I came on, it was like grabbing hold of a lightning bolt, and then it was full steam. And, it's the same way in professional sports, when guys are in the minors and then they step up to the majors, it's a complete change. And you think you know everything until you're in it. and then it was a whole brand new learning curve. So thank God that I had done and laid the groundwork and was able to kind of take those years of experience and apply them and help even catapult me further. So
Yeah.
yeah, man, wrestling was just in my blood from a kid, and then I kind of got away from it when mixed martial arts became prevalent, and then I found my way back to it.
Yeah, that was going to be one of my questions. Like, at what point when you start working with AEW, do they say like, "Hey man, you do your thing," or do they go, "Hey man, this is what we want, and we want you to make it as close to this"? Like, how much freedom do you have versus working independently, where you have pretty much all the freedom, then going to AEW? What is that process like for you?
Well, I always knew in the very beginning that you kind of as a musician and as an artist, you kind of have to put your own stuff to the side. Like you
Hmm.
have to. There's a lot of artists that they hold and they cherish the music that they make. They can't take any sort of criticism, or they tell you, hey, change this, change that. You hear
Hmm.
a lot of different stories about artists that are in battles with the record labels that they're signed to because of these, because of those things. And so what ends up happening is I'm not telling my story, I'm telling somebody else's story.
Yep.
So I have to make sure that I'm not completely married to any ideas that I have. I have to do what's best to tell the story of the person that I'm working with. So with AEW, it's a complete collaborative effort.
Hmm.
Sometimes it's me and the talent directly. Sometimes it's me and the executive team. Sometimes it's all of us. Sometimes it's just me and Tony Khan specifically. One on one. And I try to work with people that aren't necessarily musically inclined. So you have to kind of learn how to decipher what they're asking for. And if I say four on the floor, they're not going to know what four on the floor is. I'm
Right.
going to know what that is. But when they
Yeah.
say, I want a driving kick, boom, boom, I know that personally is four on the floor. So
Yep.
it's little things like that, and just trying to explore what it is that they're trying to express. And and it's always a collaborative. And there's times where I come in, I'm like, I know this is what's going to work for you. And then they'll say like, oh my God, like I've never thought in a million years that this would work. Case in point, Speedball Bailey. When Speedball came in, he had been using Brass Monkey on the Indies for forever.
Yeah.
And the track that he had when he was in TNA was just a very kind of a low key, kind of a brooding type sound, a little bit epic to it. But, when he came in, he hit me up and I was like, I hear like this Street Fighter theme, but I hear it in context of like an 80s breakdance track. And he was like, that's extremely intriguing. So I heard it all like in an instant, laid it down, sent it over to him. And the funny thing was, he's like, the only thing that I would say, like in the track itself, it says Ultima, like a callback, call and response. I had the jam sucker, dance sucker, like in
Oh,
like in the
yeah.
Rage Against the Machine, jam
Yeah.
sucker, jam. He's like, I don't know if the sucker part works for me. It's total placeholder. We can swap that out, but it's a case by case basis. But 99 times out of 100, it's going to be a full collaborative effort with everybody that's involved.
Love it. So, AEW WrestleDream coming to St. Louis on the 18th at Shavitz Arena. My question to you is, when it is those pay-per-views, it's those big events, does your job change at all, or is it still business as normal for Mikey Rukus?
It does. It things are at a very heightened peak when we get to pay-per-views. It kind of goes along, and then like even when storylines are cresting for the pay-per-view, our workload is cresting, and a lot of times ideas come together in the arena when everybody's there, whether it's
Hmm.
preludes, whether it's certain things that are going to take place. If there's a track that we're looking to license that doesn't come through, I have to be on call. So I've learned from the very first Double or Nothing. I've learned that the day of and the night before are especially going to be, just be ready for a phone call because something can change on the fly. So I've always made myself available. There is a story like the very first Double or Nothing, the Young Bucks called me the day of the show, and they were actually planning on debuting the Dark Order that day.
Oh, wow.
And it ended up getting pushed back to the next pay-per-view. Maybe it was like either Fighter Fest or Fight for the Fallen. But I made their theme that day, like maybe 3.5 hours. So that first Join Us, that was their thing. And I knew from the get-go, I was like, this is going to be a thing, because I understand once everybody comes together and they get the grand scheme of things, and people are walking the building and they want to figure out what they want to do, they kind of look at the aesthetic, they have ideas, and the video walls are coming together, things change. So
Yep.
I actually love it that way, because it just puts you in the mode of, okay, it's all about decision making. Like,
Mhm.
what they want creatively, you just have to make the decisions, and make the decisions quickly and deliver. So I love it. I absolutely. There's some people that would crumble under that type of pressure, but I'm like, I get a phone call, I'm like, I got one for you. I'm like, let's do it. If I got to
Love
work
it.
overnight, I'll do it overnight.
Absolutely love it, man. Hey, sometimes that's when the best stuff comes out, when you don't have that time to think about it and you could just get after it. That's when sometimes the best things happen. When you're coming up with a theme for somebody that's about to debut or somebody that wants a different theme, are you in your mind going, okay, I have to make this reflective of the wrestler, reflective of the vibe that they're trying to create, and it has to connect with the audience? And what happens when that doesn't happen? So how do you go back and go, okay, I thought it was going to go this way and it clearly went the other way. Where do we go from here?
Yeah, so it's happened before, and originally, when ideas would come up that would be a complete 180, I had to learn that the fan base isn't always, and not just AEW fan base, but fans as a whole, whether it's for any fandom of a TV show or a movie franchise, people don't like change.
Mm-hmm.
And they like what they like, and they like what makes them feel good. And when there's a complete shift from that, there's going to be this instant shock and this instant kind of, oh my God, like I no, and sometimes collectively they'll kind of get together and they'll gang up, but you have to kind of put that aside, because at some point that once they get used to it, and it's the same thing with like when a wrestler leaves a company, goes to another company, they have a name change. Everybody kind of gets their jokes in and gets their dunks off about the name change, and then
Yep.
eventually they understand like where we're going with it.
Mm-hmm.
Case in point, the Young Bucks theme. They had come out to Super Kick Party for so many years, and they wanted to go with the EVP vibe. And I remember them talking to me, and we were talking about like Succession and that type of vibe. And I told them, I was like, you guys do realize this is like a complete 180-degree turn from what and they were like, absolutely, this is what we want to do. And once they're committed, I'm committed. And regardless of what the reaction is out of the gate, you hope it's well received. Sometimes
Mm-hmm.
it will be, sometimes it won't be, but then you just kind of have to let the chips fall where they may, and then understand that the greater scheme of all of this is about the story. So fans may not necessarily like it out of the gate, but at the same time, this is the story that the storyteller wants to tell. So,
Yep.
and I think what ends up happening is you'll have some that will purposely try to pander to a fan base to make them happy. You might spam some chants in there and try to force some chants from the crowd, and
Mm-hmm.
that stuff never works. And you end up doing a disservice to the person telling the story by putting something in there, hoping that the fans will like it. So it happens. You just roll with it.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I think of, whenever I see any clip that has the crowd singing Judas, like immediately I go, this is natural. This naturally
Yeah.
happened. It wasn't forced. And I think that's when it works the best, is when we
Yes.
let the fans dictate where we're going to go with this. And I think that works great. Now, you had mentioned that sometimes you guys do use licensed music. I know Tony Khan is not afraid to do that. How involved are you in that process? And like, have you ever met with somebody and been like, hey, I think the perfect song for you would be blank, this licensed piece of music? Are you involved in that process at all or no?
So I was very heavily involved in the very beginning,
Mm-hmm.
and as we've grown, there's different requests that come at different times, and a lot of it falls on Tony as to whether he wants to license it or not. So if I have an idea on a song that I think would work great, I'll go directly to him and say, hey, I think this would work. And we've had a couple of discussions like that before. We've had some songs I thought would be great that didn't necessarily pan out in terms of publishing, trying to get publishing at the table. And there's been other times when we finally left Daly's place for post COVID,
Mm-hmm.
and we had the video package where it was basically saying, goodbye. I had dreamed the night before this, when everybody was talking about Dirty Heads Celebrate. Like that was and I felt, and we had a lot of things in motion at the time. And I called Tony up and I was like, Tony, this is the song. This has to be the one. And I reached out to the publishing company. I put in the offer. I counter offered. We did the deal. I got with legal and we put everything down. And to me, like, that was a very, very important thing for me. Not just the fact that we got the deal done, but it's such an integral part in our story. And there was a pivot point because we went from no fans for, I don't know how many, 15, 16 months
Yeah.
to, leaving Daly's place after all of those many months and the long taping days and things like that. And just, it was like waving goodbye and say, hey, we'll be back, and then we do the homecomings every year and everything like that. So that in itself was very, very important to me. A lot of times we'll have, one new licensed song come up and then you've got 4 or 5 other requests and, hey, can I get this? Hey, can I get that? And again, a lot of it just comes down to whether Tony thinks it works or not. At the end of the day, he's the booker, he's the storyteller, and he's the guy that spends the money on it. So
Absolutely. Well, this is a great full circle moment for me because Dirty Heads is my favorite artist of all time. And
wow.
I remember that specifically. And I remember the roommate that I had with me at the time. I looked at him, and we're both giant wrestling nerds. And I looked at him and I went, this is perfect. And I never would have thought of it. So to know that you're the reason that happened, it's great, man. This is a full circle moment for me. I love it. Again, we're joined by Mikey Rukus, and he is the man behind the music, all things AEW. Are there any particular musical styles or genres that you have not worked into a theme yet that you would love to?
Oh, it's really tough to say because, I mean, up to this point, I think I've done over 500. I've done around 500 themes for AEW since 2019.
Hey.
So you think of what the active roster is, you think of the one-offs, you think of the interludes, the bumps, you think of, people that debut for once or twice and they're gone, Great Muda. And then you think of the ones that have been there the entire time, Eddie Kingston is an OG. Like, we made his track in 2020, you know what I mean? And there's been so many different genres that I've always wanted to get into. I think the biggest one for me was the EDM, and I got to do that with the Hater Raves, both of the Hater Raves. And the second one, I really got to delve into the different subgenres, the drum and bass and the hard style specifically. With the first one, I had no idea what I was doing. You know what I mean? That was my learning process and taking on that endeavor. And a lot of times with TV, you only got about a minute and a half, so you have to focus on telling the story that has to be told in that window. And experimenting with the Hater Rave gave me the opportunity to take the time, look at builds, look at different types of techniques. And when I came out of the first one, I had learned so much. And even I'd go back and listen to it now, and I'm like, oh, I would have done this different, this different, And with the second one, I knew going in, okay, this is what I'm going after. I'm going after trap. I'm going after hardstyle. I'm going after dub and drum and bass, and really got a chance to study and dig into the nuances of what makes that genre as powerful as it is. And I'm a metalhead and a hip hop head at heart. Like, that's what I grew up on. And just discovering the EDM, the aspect of it, and it's kind of like math, but it's kind of like colors at the same time. I don't know. That's the only way I can really explain it. And it's something that I never thought I would be able to do. But that, to me, like, if I never did anything else again, like, I would be 1,000% happy with the way that turned out.
Love that, man. Love that. So if I'm out there, I'm listening to this show, and I'm sitting there going, how do I become the next Mikey Rukus? If you had to give advice for somebody that, and let's get even hyper specific here, somebody that's like, I want to do this with wrestling, this is what I want to do, what advice would you give them today?
I would definitely tell them, start small. There are indie promotions everywhere. Yep. There are, I mean, if you get locked into the pro wrestling scene, especially on Facebook is a big one. A lot of the indie workers have everything on their own social media, and they promote, whether it's IG, or X or wherever. Start working at the bottom. Like, you have to have building blocks. Like, nobody steps in and then you're on TV. You know what I mean?
Right.
You have to create the opportunity, and creating the opportunity means going through the fire, trying and failing, experimenting, listening to what people are asking for and replicating it, trying new things, Xing it all out, and then starting over again. Like, you're going to have those interactions. You learn how to be a diplomat. You learn how to decipher what somebody's saying. You learn how to present music for someone else that's not necessarily yours, but it's theirs. You treat the indie workers like champions, because tomorrow they will be champions, and they will never forget those things when you come through for them. And when the time is right, the door will be there.
Love it. All right. I got one final question for you. And you don't have to think of this with your wrestling hat on. You could just think of this as Mikey, all right? This is something that we do on the Sounds of STL here. If you were able to create Rukus Palooza and you had to pick 3 headlining acts to be the main artists for Rukus Palooza, who are they?
Oh, man. Right off the top, it would have to be the original Sepultura lineup.
Ooh, yeah, baby.
Sepultura's got to be in there. If I had my own entrance theme that was licensed, it would be Roots Bloody Roots. That would be me.
Love it. Love it, man.
I'd have to get Busta Rhymes in there just to kind of throw it a different way. And this sounds absolutely off the wall and it doesn't make any sense at all. But I saw Baby Metal last year for the first time, and I was absolutely blown away. Like, and I just so happens that I know a few of the guys in the band, but I love it. So Sepultura,
Baby Metal is something special, man. Baby Metal is definitely something special. The stuff that they did with Electric Callboy was absolutely incredible. I mean, they're doing it right, man. They're doing it right.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And as an honorable mention, Faith No More.
Oh, great, dude. Faith No More.
And I would want them to play the Angel Dust album from start to finish. That would be the caveat.
Yeah, man. I'm buying tickets to your show. I'll be there, brother. I'll be there. Mikey, I can't thank you enough for spending some time with me this afternoon. It really means the world. And guys, don't forget, you can hear Mikey's work in person at AEW's WrestleDream when it comes to the Chaffetz here in St. Louis. Hey, man, if you're in town, I'd love to try and connect and say thanks to you in person for everything that you've done, because I am one of those folks that believe that the match starts as soon as that music hits and it sets the tone. And your work has set the tone for some absolutely epic matches. So as a wrestling fan, man, I appreciate all the hard work that you put into doing this.
Thank you so much. The pleasure to visit with you today is all mine, and to be able to do this for a living, the honor will always be mine.
Well, thank you, Mikey. And again, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Mikey Rukus.
See you.